Good morning, grade 10s, and welcome to my lessons on Finders Keepers. Finders Keepers by Rosamund Hayden will be the novel that we will be studying this year. And I'm going to ask you, please, that from now until I tell you again, to please make sure that you have your copy of this book in front of you. Now, grade 10s, I need to explain to you that we will be reading this book, and it is called a novel, and a novel means a long story. And this is quite a long story, although obviously there are much thicker books with longer stories. At School Oosterlig, we try to cover as many of the English literature genres as possible during your senior English course. So in grade 10, we do the novel, which is a long story. In grade 11, we do a drama, and at Oosterlig we normally do a Shakespeare. This year they're doing Merchant of Venice. We've also done Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet and different dramas, but we do that in grade 11. And then in matric, we do the short story genre, and they read a whole lot of short stories and they answer questions on that. So by the time you leave Hoërskool Oosterlig, you have covered the poetry genre of literature, which we do every year. We do poetry. And then you've done the novel, the long story. You've done a drama, and you will have done a short story genre by the time you've finished. Now, grade 10s, Finders Keepers is here to stay. It's going nowhere. So you now need to realize and you need to concentrate that this is how it's going to work. The system is as follows. I will be reading this book to you page for page, page by page. If you get bored, shame. If you get tired, go to sleep and go back to it and follow when you are awake. This book is going nowhere. You're going to be examined on it. So in the same way as what you sit up straight in the physics class, or you sit up straight when the teacher in geography is teaching geomorphology, I don't care what subject you take or how bored you get, but I am reading Finders Keepers to you, and you will follow. At the end of each chapter, there are set questions which I will send through on your RCL group to you. You answer them in your book, and then we will mark them when we are finished. Or every few chapters I'll keep marking. Finders Keepers is a lovely novel. It's a long story. It's set in modern day South Africa. Now, let's talk about this, grade 10, so that we're all on the same page, that we all understand. Grade 10s, I have taught at many different high schools in my 30 odd years of teaching. And if there's one thing I've learned, it is that while teenagers desperately want to be individuals, while teenagers desperately want to stand out and be unique, while teenagers don't want to conform to the rules and listen to the regulations, every single teenager has a need to be accepted. Every single teenager, no matter where they come from, no matter what they look like, no matter what language they speak, there are so many similarities in teenagers. The problem of one teenager is very often the problem of another teenager and another teenager. Yes, there are differences. Obviously, a Japanese culture is totally different to a Brazilian culture. Obviously, a Sotho culture is totally different to a Italian culture. So cultures are different. Yes, if you look at an Indian person and you look at a black person, you can see they look different. But the bottom line is that, irrelevant of what somebody looks like, irrelevant of what language somebody speaks, irrelevant of what culture they come from, a teenager is a teenager. You all often have the same anxiety, the same concerns, the same lack of confidence at certain stages in your life. Problems that are found in one household often occur in many different households. So while it's going to be quite difficult for you as a Hoërskool Oosterlig Afrikaans speaking teenager to relate to a lot of the different things that happen in this novel, it's going to be very interesting for you to learn about a different culture, to learn about a different way of life here in our own country. And then you are often going to forget that the characters, the main characters in this novel, don't look like you, don't speak necessarily the same home language that you do. You're going to forget that actually all those things that you thought made you so different, you're going to forget about them, and you're going to be able to relate to the problems that these teenagers have. Because at the end of the day, teenagers very, very often share exactly the same likes and dislikes, the same issues. I mean, and you only have to look at the situation that we're in South Africa at the moment, the lockdown situation. We're all in it together. We're all in it with our fears. We're all in it with our emotional roller coaster. The 1 minute you're up and the 1 minute you're down, and the 1 minute you don't know whether you're happy or whether you're sad. And these are experiences that we're all having, although we all have different issues that come with lockdown. Now, in a modern day South Africa, irrelevant of where you live or who you speak to, the word poverty comes up, poor people, unemployment, social unrests, but there's also this conflict, this fight between that which is traditional, that which your granny and grandpa and your mother and father want you to experience, and that which you as a teenager experiencing. Take, for example, the technological fight, the technology. You don't have a problem with having your television on, your laptop on, and being on your cell phone. Your mother walks into your room and she says, "What are you doing? All this technology, I don't know how you cope. Put your phone down." So you have this contrast, you have this fight, irrelevant of your culture, irrelevant of your background. Or parents say, "Get off that phone for a minute now, it's glued to your hand." So we're going to experience that within this novel. All right. Now, when one reads a novel, there are certain things that we will be concentrating on. And the things that we will be concentrating on in this novel will be the plot. Now, the plot is the story, and that's what we're going to get as we read through the plot. Then there is the setting. Now, the setting I'll come back to in a minute. They're the characters. We're going to read and learn and look and study different characters. We're going to look at, are they flat characters, or do we see them developing? And is there a change in their personality as we read the novel? We're going to look at characters and how they influence each other, and we're going to look at character sketches explaining what characters' behavior is like, and that will come as we read the novel. Then we're also going to be looking at themes. So themes are ideas that are sent throughout the novel, and we'll study them in detail as well. So for the study of Finders Keepers, we're going to be looking at this novel, the plot, the setting, the characters, and the themes. All right. Having said that to you, I'd like to talk to you today about the setting. Now, when you hear the word on television, you often hear the Hollywood producers and actors and famous people saying, "We were on set when." Now, what that means is that's where it happened, where the cameras were, where the actor was acting, where they filmed the shots on the set. And exactly the same in a novel. You have a setting. The setting, however, is described to you as where and when. Where did the story take place, and when did it take place? Now, we've already spoken about the when. We know that this novel is set in a modern day South Africa. Okay? Where? Now, grade 10s, when you're looking at setting, especially in this novel, you will see that there are two different categories of settings. The first setting is the broad one. So we know it's South Africa, and then because of that, we also know that Sorry, I bumped my little camera thingy there. We know that the setting is, I'm going to describe the setting to you in a broad character in the South African term, but then we're also going to be looking at a more focused setting, where in South Africa and what happens there. Now, when we look at the setting, if I can just find my notes. Oh, yeah, they are. Good. No, they're really not. Novel. Right. Setting, and we've said that when is in a modern day South Africa. Now I'd like to show you this. And this is the setting, and you've all seen this map 100 times since you were little. It obviously is the map of South Africa with the 9 different provinces. Now, as we read through the novel, there are only 4 provinces that we're going to be referring to or looking at. The first one is right in the north of our country, Limpopo. And on the north of the Limpopo province, we have Venda. Now, Venda is a specific piece of land that was put aside for the Venda tribe in the nationalist government, and people of the Venda tribe originate from there in the north of Limpopo. They have specific cultural traditions and value systems, and we are going to study them in detail. Then we're also going to be looking at another province, Gauteng, that's where you and I live, and there we're going to be looking at Johannesburg, or Josie as they call it in the novel, and more specific at the township Soweto. We then move south. We'll be referring to and looking at a character that comes from the Eastern Cape, and again they're totally different cultural and traditional values to the people in the north of our country. And then we will be focusing specifically on the settings that happen in a township. We never know which township. The name of the township is never given, but we'll be looking at a township in Cape Town in the Western Cape. And most of the settings are here unless they are referred, the other provinces are referred to. So that then, grade 10s, would be the setting of the novel, the where and the when. All right, so we've looked at the novel. We're going to be looking at the story, the plot. We've looked at the setting. We're going to be looking at characters, and we're going to be looking at themes. Now, the logistics behind this is I need you please to have your literature exercise book with you. I want you on that front page. Remember, now at the back of this book should be all your poetry notes. We've analyzed 3 poems. That should all be with your answers, because I know you've answered all the questions. All your questions have been answered at the back of your poetry book. Now you turn to the front of book 2, your literature book, and we're going to do the novel Finders Keepers. On the front page, I need you to write the date, and I need you to write the heading, Finders Keepers, and then characters. And as we go along, grade 10s, obviously you don't do it as big as what I have. I've done it for the sake of the video. As we read, so you're going to write the character that we meet, just their name every single time, and we can come back and refer to these people. That will be characters. Then I want you please to turn over and to open a page that is called setting, and another page that is called themes. And as we discuss them, so you can come back and jot down notes here if you need to. Okay, so grade 10s, you will then from now onwards have your exercise book open in front of you, and you will have this book in front of you. Now, grade 10s, you will see if you turn to the front of the book, there's a whole lot here on introduction about the author, about the novel. You don't have to read that yet. I'll read that to you later. Then if you turn to the back, you'll see there's questions and answers. That's lovely. Don't do them. I will do them together. We'll work on them. Just ignore them. Also here at the back is a whole lot of the summary and the notes on the concepts and devices. Don't bother. You're going to have to read this book anyway, so that's not important. You turn directly to what is called the prologue. Now, a prologue is what comes before. So we start with chapter 1 over here, But before that, we get our prologue. And then the book ends with, after the last summary, we have the epilogue, the closing. So this might be seen as an introduction and a conclusion. But it is very important that you read the prologue and the epilogue, and then you read the chapter for chapter. Now, I have already told you, grade 10s, that I'm going to be reading it to you. So I don't care whether you're bored. You know my feeling. We need to do this work, so we're going to do it to the best of our ability, and that's all there is to it. And I start this morning then with a prologue. Now, you have your book in front of you so that you can jot down the characters if we meet anybody. And I then start to read to you on page 1, the prologue. I sit in the yard, have you got it? I. And immediately you think back to the poems that we've done. The poem started with the word I, and I told you that always I is your first person narrator. First person narrator, meaning the narrator is the person who tells the story. So the story is told in the first person. I, me, mine. Okay? I, me, and mine, the first person narrator. Now, Finders Keepers is quite interesting because it not only has a first person narrator, there's a third person narrator too. Now, remember, first person is I, me, and mine. Second person is you, yours. And then the third person is when you talk about somebody. She drank the water, then he walked in the room, then they went to town. That's third person storytelling. So there's both in Finders Keepers. But the protagonist, the main character in the novel, the story is told, the narration is done in the first person. And that is why we start the prologue with, I sat in the yard of my friend Norky's house. So you can write Norky on your page. If you want to, you can write Norky. I sit in the yard of my friend Norky's house, a blanket pulled tightly around my shoulders. It's dark, but soon it will be dawn, and Norky's uncle will come in his taxi to fetch us. If you want to write Norky's uncle, you can. We will be on the move again, looking for a safer place to live in another township. Smoke from the shack fires is still in the air. I know there must be stars shining brightly in the darkness above the smoke, but I can't see the stars. I know that nothing will be the same again, but I don't know what the future holds. Everything is different after the fire. I am different. It's not something you can see, like a new hairstyle or growing taller. It's something inside. Something that started to change the day I met Mandla. My mother comes out and puts her hand on my shoulder. Lufuno, soon it will be light and we will have to leave. Aha, so we've now met the mother and we've met the I character. The first person narrator, we've now learned her name is Lufuno. Lufuno, soon it will be light and we will have to leave. She's anxious not to miss our lift. I'll come later, I tell her. She knows I'm waiting for Mandla. Another character to write down is Mandla. She knows I'm waiting for Mandla, but she says nothing. I hope he will come soon. Perhaps he's on his way right now. My mother shakes her head. Our family will stick together. We aren't leaving without you. When she goes back inside, I close my eyes. I shut out the hows and the whys and the ifs. They can wait. Instead, I remember a time before the fire, a week ago, the day I first saw Mandla. All right, grade 10s, that then is your prologue to Finders Keepers. There are no questions on it. That's all I'm going to be doing with you today. I will start with chapter 1 the next time I teach you. So from me, I hope that you are continuing to be polite to the people who care about you. I trust that we will meet again. I don't know where, I don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Good morning and thank you. The girls can go and the boys can follow.